What about the role of companies in these tough economic times? Corruption Watch has released a report this week that suggests corporate South Africa could do so much more to fight corruption. 36 listed companies, 14 of South Africa's biggest non-listed companies were assessed in terms of transparency and measures stated to deal with corruption. The NGO compiled the survey called Transparency in Corporate Reporting, using information from the firm's annual reports and websites. Corruption Watch found that a majority of companies do not have policies in place that ban bribes, and many do not publicly state that protections are offered to whistleblowers. Well, to discuss, we're joined by the CEO of Corruption Watch, David Lewis. Great to have you with us, David. So this is information that they're putting out publicly. Yeah. First, I have to ask, I guess some could talk the talk, but not follow it through with action, others as well. Do you think it's a good gauge?
Yeah, I mean, companies don't always do what they say, and at the other end of the spectrum, they don't always say what they do. So it's possible that many of those who on paper are reporting that they're doing a whole lot of good things are not doing them as well in practice. But the fact that they say it enables those who are close to the companies and working in the companies or supplying to the companies or buying from the companies, it enables them to say, hey, this is not how it really is, and you've stated this publicly and we want to hold you to account. By the same token, those who have done badly or not so well can look at this and aspire to do better, and some of them may not have put onto their websites what it is that they actually do, and now they need to report it.
And I guess putting up a number for whistleblowers itself is an important step. And you say that firms should be public about their protections that they offer for whistleblowers. Yeah. Why is that so important?
Because it's important for people to know who blow the whistle and who report on the hotlines that companies provide, that there will be no comeback at them as a result of blowing the whistle. And so that's an important public statement to make that will strengthen the whistleblowing process.
Okay, so this is really interesting to me. The mining companies did well. Yeah. The banking sector not so well. The media sector definitely doing badly. Outline the main findings.
Well, the major finding is that South African companies don't do too badly on the transparency stakes. There's a lot of room for improvement, but they don't do too badly. The mining companies do well, which is great. They partly do well because mining is subject across the world to regulations that many others are not, and so they're required to do well because they've done so badly in the past that these extra regulations have been imposed upon them, and particularly they've been imposed by the British and European and the American governments and legislation. And because many of our major mining companies are exposed to stock exchange listings in London or New York, they need to be very careful about the disclosure regulations imposed upon them by those regimes. So this, shows that regulation and laws, however companies may complain about them, do actually work.
You would think that there would be more laws in place following what's happened with the banks, for example.
Yes, the banks surprised me, actually. And some of them didn't do too badly. Others didn't do well. And they now have the opportunity to do better.
Make it concrete. So Anglo-American, Platt, Hollard and Woolworths scored highly. Exactly what are they doing that other companies are not and should consider?
Well, they measured along three metrics. The first being probably the most important, although the second and the third companies fell down on. The first is on the anti-corruption programs, and they're scored along a number of measures. You've mentioned some of them. Do you tell whistleblowers they won't be retaliated against? That sort of question. The second is on their organizational transparency. Do they reveal what subsidiaries they are, what associated companies they're involved with, and where are these located? And the third is on country-by-country reporting. In other words, are they reporting financial results for the global company or just by region? Or do you know where they're earning their returns and in what country they are doing so. That's how they were scaled and measured and ultimately ranked.
Country by country is also interesting because we know some firms have one set of rules for the country in which they are hosted, or their main head office is, and different rules, maybe bend the rules when you go to another country that demands bribes or things like that. Looking at this, do you think that sort of behavior is still rife? Can you get any sense?
Yes, it is. I mean, the country by country reporting, which is the measure on which most companies scored lowest, is becoming a regulation for a requirement for business disclosure, and it's principally about money laundering and transfer pricing, and about saying, are you earning your profits in Botswana but showing them in some tax haven that in which you're not producing anything. And that's why the country-by-country reporting is becoming more and more important with the release of the Panama Papers and other releases of information beforehand. This is going to become a very important measure, and one that South African multinationals, of whom there are many on that list of companies surveyed, are going to have to pay close attention to.
To me, it's quite confusing because the Panama Papers came out, and I think they've actually overwhelmed people because, you are allowed to have offshore accounts, so it wasn't all illegal, but it raises questions. We then have, I think, King 3, very high standards on reporting. So just explain to me exactly where you think it's going. Even beyond complying with the law, how do you be really transparent? Do you declare country by country, as you say?
Tell what you do. If you're doing something good, flaunt it. Tell the public that this is what we're doing, and preempt the necessity for regulation to require them to do so. I mean, country by country reporting, for example, is going to be legislated at some stage or another. Get your ducks in a row and do it now. And the burdens, I think, are significantly exaggerated relative to the advantages that accrue from opening up to the public.
What about the bribes, which maybe are not happening here, but in other countries? It's interesting you say that they're not banning that, and that's
they're
an
not
important
saying
step.
that they're banning that. And I don't doubt that many companies, several of the companies lower down on that list, I know that they have very strict positions on taking or making bribes. But the point of this survey is, do they tell the public that we are not prepared to engage in bribery in any way whatsoever? So many of them may be banning bribes, and I think most companies are. I mean, that's criminal activity. But they need to tell the public that, and the public need to hold them to account by the public standard that they've enunciated.
The final question, is there any danger? The more transparent you are, the more likely you are to have stones thrown at you. Is that something that companies worry about?
If you're transparent and you say you do something and you don't do it, somebody is going to point this out, and that's exactly what transparency is about.
Good for all. Okay, well, thank you very much for outlining all the findings of that report, David Lewis from Corruption Watch. Now, a rally in the global oil price today.